Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's ISC2 webinar. Once again, I'm joined by Steve Piper, who's the founder and CEO of CyberEdge. And I can tell from the large turnout of pre-registrants, nearly 14,000 people, this is going to be one for the ages. He's going to be giving his top 5 cybersecurity predictions for 2025. Lots of great insights from the research that he and the team do there at CyberEdge. So I think you'll enjoy this as much as I will. Steve, I still can't get over these numbers that you're bringing in here for this. People love these predictions.
I think you're a rock star. I mean, I saw you present in person, my friend, at ISC2 Security Congress in Las Vegas. On your worst day, I'll never look half as cool as you do. But I think it's you. And honestly,
I blame my tailor.
The ISC team is also great at promoting these webinars. So it's a team.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I have not looked at what your predictions are, so I'll be just as surprised as our audience. So let me turn things over to you, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks for all of you for joining. And I did a Google search just for fun, and I was trying to get an idea of the average attendance at a Major League Baseball game in the United States. And today's attendance is going to be some of the, like a typical live attendance in a smaller market baseball stadium. It's huge. So I'm so grateful to all of you for turning out. And of course, thousands of people watch our webinars. All right. So what are we going to do over the next hour? I want to do my usual 2024 year in review. I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, some of the ugly data breaches and ransomware attacks that we saw this year, the more high profile ones. Then I want to talk about my top 5 cybersecurity predictions for next year. And then I have 5 honorable mentions. I don't think they make the top 5, but I think they're worth mentioning and talking about. As always, Brandon and I want this to be interactive. So submit questions anytime. Brandon is always encouraged to interrupt me midstream, go back a slide, whatever we need to do. We just want to keep this interactive and fun. All right, so let's talk about 2024, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So by now, most of you, if not pretty darn close to all of you, are familiar with my company's research, CyberEdge Group. We do this annual study every year called the Cyber Threat Defense Report. And every November, which we're now in December, last month, every November, we survey 1,200 security professionals from 17 countries and 19 industries. So it's a highly statistically significant survey report. And of course, we're just thrilled every year, including next year, to have ISC2 as one of our platinum sponsors. So much of the findings I'm going to have in this presentation would be based on that report, including these 2 charts here. So if I had to say a theme for this year's Cyber Threat Defense Report, it's that things are looking better. Okay, things are still bad. Clearly, things are bad, but there were some bright spots. And as cybersecurity professionals, we're always happy to get good news, happy to see bright spots. So, in terms of the percentage of organizations that were victimized by at least one successful attack, that's decreased from the height of the pandemic. It was around 86% of organizations. Okay, that's ticked down over the last 3 years. Now it's 81.5. Okay, that's not huge. I mean, not a huge difference. And when we go to the next slide and talking about the bad, the converse of that is more than 80% of organizations were victimized, but we're trending in the right direction. It seems like the bleeding has stopped. We also ask our respondents, was your organization successfully victimized by a ransomware attack? Then we asked, did you pay the ransom? And then we asked, okay, if you paid the ransom, did you get your data back? So the chart on the bottom right, we saw our first ever decline in successful ransomware attacks. Keep that in mind because that's going to relate to one of my predictions here. Now, of course, the converse of 64% of organizations being successfully compromised by ransomware, the converse of that is 35% weren't. So that's good. But actually, it was a pretty big drop from last year's CDR to this year's CDR from 73% to 64%. That is definitely a favorable trend. We also ask our respondents, do you think an attack, a successful attack, is more likely than not in the coming year? Just a few years ago, it was 75% felt it was more likely than not. That's down to 67%. So instead of 3 and 4 security pros believing that it's more likely than not, it's now 67% or 2 and 3. So we're starting to feel, I don't know if optimistic is the right term, or maybe less pessimistic, but I'm going to call it optimism is growing, which is good. Also, we monitor average IT security budgets, and we have a chart in this year's Cyber Threat Defense Report where we've compared the average increase over the last 3 years. This year was a record. 89% of organizations had rising IT security operating budgets. That's people and technologies and services and, all in, so to speak, for anything related to security. It was an average of 5.7% increase in the security budget. That was a record according to our research over the last 11 years. And as we all know, and security vendors are integrating artificial intelligence into their security tools. That is a fantastic thing. Brandon and I have done at least one webinar per year over the last, I think, 3 years on artificial intelligence. We ask the question, who has the upper hand, the good guys or the bad guys? So we have a webinar recording on that, and we're going to talk about that topic a little bit later. But there's no question that security tools, having generative AI, having sophisticated machine learning algorithms for detecting advanced threats, for detecting security risks, for automating functions, ... There's no question that AI is playing a big role, a very big positive role in our defenses. Okay, so that's the good news for this year in review. The bad news is, again, the converse of those charts that we just saw on the prior slide. More than 80% of organizations were successfully attacked. More than 60% of organizations were victimized. Yes, we're trending in the right direction, but still, it's bad. It's just not as bad as it has been in the last 3 years, especially during the peak of the pandemic. More than 40% of ransom payers fail to recover their encrypted data. Okay, so imagine your organization is victimized by ransomware. You go through the painstaking process of deciding to pay or not to pay, and Brandon and I have done a webinar on just that of the factors you need to consider when deciding whether to pay a ransom. It's, in my eyes, it's not a black or white decision. We're going to talk more about that topic in just a little bit. But if you do reach the conclusion to pay the ransom, which turns your stomach because you're funding this multi-billion-dollar ransomware industry, if you make that incredibly difficult decision to pay, man, you sure would hope to get your data back. Well, over the past few years, around 72, 73% of ransom payers got their data back. That's the chart in the upper right. This year's CDR, we saw a big drop to 57%, almost what we saw 6 years ago when it was 49%. So it's almost like flipping a coin. Okay, if you pay the ransom, flip a coin to see if you're going to get your data back. I mean, maybe a little bit better than 50% right now at 57%. So that is a factor, and that's a factor I want you to think about if you're and at least weigh that in an ingredient of trying to decide whether you should pay a ransom if that day ever comes. Okay, more than 85% of organizations are still short-staffed. Okay, and later I'm gonna remind you about a key finding that's in our cyber threat defense report. We asked the 1,200 security pros, what is standing in the way of being successful? And the top 2 responses year after year are low security awareness among employees, which that's something we're going to talk about later, but also a shortage of IT security talent. Okay, so that's still bad. It's out there. If you download the 24 cyber threat defense report, we show you in which areas, which job roles are most in demand. Yeah, so and like I said, low security awareness. That is one of the top two responses year after year of what's standing in the way of defending your organization from cyber attacks. And one of the predictions relates to this specifically. I don't want to steal my thunder, but we're gonna talk about this topic a little bit later when I get to the honorable mentions section. We saw a lot of ugly stuff. Okay, a lot of ugly stuff as we do in every year. There's been very big data breaches. Now, the data breaches on the left that have the little asterisks, they are associated with a ransomware attack. And as we well know, ransomware is no longer just about encrypting your data. And then if you don't pay the ransom in Bitcoin or whatever anonymous currency, they're not going to give you the decryption key to recover your data. Ransomware these days is multifaceted, often comes with a data breach where if you don't pay the ransom, we're going to publish your data on the internet. Or if you don't pay your ransom, we're going to leak it to the press. Or if you don't pay your ransom, we're going to commit a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack. Notable data breaches this year: national public data, almost 3 billion with a B records related to citizens in the United States and Canada, and I believe elsewhere as well. Ticketmaster and Live Nation, Synovus Pathology Services, which we're going to talk about again, because that's going to relate to one of my predictions. Change Healthcare. We've talked about this in our previous webinars and how this impacted so many hospitals and so many doctors' practices around the world, preventing doctors and medical offices from getting paid. The Move It data breach, AT&T, Dell. There's so many to mention. These are just some of the more high-profile data breaches. And then we've seen high-profile ransomware attacks like CDK Global. And these top three ransoms were paid. $25 million ransom paid. United Health Group, $22 million. AT&T, $373K, drop in the bucket compared to these other. Synovus, Change Healthcare. We heard a lot about Change Healthcare, Ascension Hospitals. When I get to my last of the top 5 predictions for 25, we're going to talk more about ransomware and specifically hospitals. Okay, and it's my least favorite prediction that I'm making. So we'll get to that. All right. So we've covered the good, the bad, and the ugly stuff that's transpired in 24. Let's talk about my top 5 predictions for 25, and then I'll give you 5 more honorable mentions. Okay. What sort of prediction, would there be if artificial intelligence didn't play some role? It's one of the hottest topics right now, not only in cybersecurity, not only in IT, but in society. Okay, and we've done a couple webinars on artificial intelligence, specifically the impact that AI will have on the cybersecurity industry. And in that presentation, I also divert for a little bit and talk about society. A lot of scary stuff. Okay, so prediction number 1, AI still gives IT security teams the upper hand for now. Now, it is not universally understood that AI gives security teams the upper hand over threat actors. We've talked about this before. Brandon thinks, let me show you the chart on the right, and I'll tell you where I think and where Brandon thinks. So in this year's cyber threat defense report, we asked, who benefits more from artificial intelligence? Is it cyber threat actors or IT security teams? So that area in medium blue, we'll round that to 41%. Those are folks that believe it's a wash, okay, that it benefits both groups equally, the good guys and the bad guys. The area in the light blue, those respondents believe that security teams will benefit more. Let's call that 36%. Cyber threat actors, those in red, believe that threat actors will benefit more. Okay, so let's round that to 24%. So the first bullet here is, of those who are not indifferent, comparing the light blue and the red, 50% more security pros believe that AI benefits security teams more than threat actors. When we hashed this out in a prior webinar, Brandon felt it was, today it was more on the side of threat actors, and many people agree with Brandon. I think, and my background, I've been in the tech industry for 30 years, but before I started my company, CyberEdge Group, 12 years ago, where we are a cybersecurity research and marketing services firm. Before I started my company, I worked for tech vendors for 18 years. And I was previously head of products at SourceFire before it was acquired by Cisco. And I know our clients, full disclosure, are cybersecurity vendors, and I know how hard they work to integrate AI into their solutions. I do believe AI is one of the big reasons why we're seeing some favorable trends. So I believe we have the upper hand, but I want to emphasize for now. Okay, in that upper right, I underlined it. That could change in the next few years. It could. I hope it will not. I hope innovations by the security vendor industry, and there are more than 3,500 security vendors on planet Earth, and they never stand still. They're constantly innovating. I hope that security vendors will continue to innovate in artificial intelligence in other ways so that security teams always have the upper hand. But that may not be the case. And we know that the ransomware industry, the cyber threat actor community, it's, this is multi-billion dollars. And of course, there's nation state threat actors. So we'll see. We'll see. But for now, I do believe, and now being next year, since this is a prediction for next year, I think security teams will have the upper hand. One of the questions that we added to this year's or next year's CDR, and we're going to be publishing our 2025 Cyber Threat Defense Report on April 15th. So Brandon and I will talk about the findings from that report. One of the questions that we posed, which we did 3 years ago, is do you have a preference for purchasing security tools with AI? 3 years ago, it was a strong preference. My guess is it's going to be equally strong, if not even more strong in our 25 CDR. But again, we've seen positive trends: declining successful attacks, declining ransomware attacks, declining overall concern, that increased optimism or maybe decreased pessimism, and so I think we're heading in the right direction. I believe AI has a big role for that. So I think it will have the upper hand going into next year. All right, prediction number 2. Security vendors and threat actors will experiment with autonomous AI agents. Okay. If you didn't attend the prior webinar where we talked about this, if this is new, this needs to be on your radar. Okay. Now in movies like iRobot with Will Smith comes to mind, but there's zillions of movies. So where there are robots, that are they make decisions on their own actions, and there's fears that militaries in the years or decades ahead may have autonomous military robots that make decisions on the spot of who is a combatant and who is an ally, or a good guy. So in the world of cybersecurity, we're going to have autonomous AI agents, and we already do. Okay. There's a security vendor called ReliQuest. They announced on September 26, they claim to launch the first autonomous self-learning AI agent, and their AI agent is for the use case around security operations. Okay. But several months ago, researchers at University of Illinois successfully configured autonomous AI agents based on GPT-4 to scan for and exploit known vulnerabilities. So these are agents that are just floating around. They can spread like worms. If we think about the difference between a computer virus and a worm, a virus needs to spread, a human spreads computer viruses, worms kind of spread on their own. What if there were autonomous agents that could spread on their own? And the wide belief here is that both white hatters and black hatters may soon have autonomous AI agents to do different things. Now, from the white hatter perspective, to discover vulnerabilities so that they can be patched, including vulnerabilities in your homegrown web applications. I believe about a third, 30 some percent of CVEs that are registered in the MITRE CVE database. That's the vulnerability database for common vulnerabilities and exposures. So if my memory is correct, about a third of CVEs in any given year map to OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. So we need to scan for vulnerabilities in our own web applications. What if there were AI agents to scan for vulnerabilities across your entire infrastructure? Okay, homegrown apps, third-party apps, and so on. So that'd be great. But my prediction here is that threat actors will also experiment with autonomous AI agents. We're going to start to hear about this more in 2025. Okay, prediction number 3. Fewer organizations will make ransomware payments. This is a good thing, okay? Nobody wants to fund ransomware gangs. Okay, no good people want to fund ransomware gangs. Okay, so here's our stat over the last 7 years, and it reached a peak in 2022 where almost 2/3 of organizations victimized by ransomware were paying ransoms. We saw a downtick last year. We saw a pretty big jump this year. I am thrilled that this year, less than half, 49% of ransomware victims paid ransoms. Now, why do I believe this trend is going to continue? Well, for one thing, last year, 48 countries, including the United States, signed this International Counter Ransomware Initiative called the CRI, pledging that their national governments would not pay ransoms. Okay. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm pleased that Florida passed legislation prohibiting state and local entities from paying ransoms. Okay. Hopefully, the threat actors out there, the ransomware gangs, get that message, and then they won't target, county, city, and state, entities in the state of Florida, because it would be illegal to pay them. That was put to the test when the city of Miami was hit by a ransomware attack. Australia, I believe this is the only country right now. I could be mistaken, but Australia mandates that its companies in Australia, if they pay a ransom, they must report it, which means publicity. Okay, which means that will be on the public record that an organization paid a ransom. Okay, so that is going to go into an ingredient. Do we pay the ransom? We're a private company. Hopefully nobody's going to know that we paid a ransom. But if you're forced to report it, and that's going to be on the public record, you may get some bad press about that. And then there are some cyber insurance providers that are starting to refuse ransomware payments as part of their policies. They may have other components related to ransomware, lost business, downtime, lawsuits, all the things that are costs of a data breach or a ransomware attack. And I am a fan of IBM Security's annual cost of data breach study. I forget the latest number. It's like the average data breach is like 4.5 million or something like that. And it varies by country. It's a really good report. But AXA in France, they, for their customers, they will not reimburse their customers for the actual ransom payments. Okay. So these are all things that are positive to reduce the potential for organizations paying ransoms. And I think all of us would argue that's a really good thing. Okay. So we're heading in the right direction there. Prediction number 4, and this was the headline, I think it was last month. We talked about passwordless authentication. I do believe, and sorry for the font size here, I think it's a Bright Talk rendering thing. But passwordless authentication becomes the new normal. Okay. So a couple things I want to mention here. Gartner and Forrester, the big, 2 analyst firms where they have, market research analysts that cover every nook and cranny of the IT universe, and many of their analysts are dedicated to cybersecurity. So Gartner in particular, they issue SPAs in their research, strategic planning assumptions. And in their August 30th, 2024 report, Migrate to Passwordless Authentication to Enhance Security and Optimize US, their SPA says by 2027, more than 75% of workforce authentication transactions and more than 40% of customer authentication transactions will be passwordless with concomitant security and UX, user experience benefits. And passwordless authentication. And if you missed last month's webinar, please check it out in the Bright Talk channel. There's not only excellent security benefits, but there's also benefits to the user experience, where they save many hours per year and frustration trying to connect to their applications. So it's really a win-win. It's a win for security, win for employees. Our research, we asked, and this was the last question of the survey, where we ask about emerging technologies, whether it's currently in use or implementation in progress. So we asked, what are your deployment plans for passwordless authentication? So the dark green slice here is currently in production. Okay, we'll round that to 40%. The light green is implementation in progress. That's 30%. Okay, add 40 and 30, we're already up to 70. So 70%, 7 in 10 organizations are either currently in production or implementation is in progress. Another 17% say it's going to begin soon. Okay, so if you're one of those 14% of organizations that have no plans, I encourage you to reconsider. Take that as an action item from this webinar. And there are so many different options out there, so many different approaches. There are hundreds and hundreds of vendors out there. There are biometric options like fingerprint readers or facial recognition. There's possession options. There's authenticator apps like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. One-time password options, magic links, USB and Bluetooth security keys or tokens. Smart cards. So the U.S. government, they call their employee badges CAC cards, common access cards. Certificate-based authentication, which wasn't something I really was all that familiar with before last month's webinar. Very compelling solution. Lots of ease of use there. Lots of great, security there. And mobile or FIDO2 authenticator apps. So there's so many solutions. And the key takeaway from last month's webinar is there's no silver bullet here. There's no approach that is so universal that is appropriate for everyone. It all depends on your use cases. And you may have 3-4 different approaches for different divisions in your company. There may be different reasons, legitimate reasons why you adopt more than one approach. So just keep that in mind as you explore passwordless authentication options for the coming year. All right, next, prediction. This is my least favorite. And I do want to assure you, I'm a marketing guy. I love PowerPoint. Unfortunately, Bright Talk is rendering the slides a little bit weird. I saw that with the autonomous AI agent thing. So sorry about that. But prediction number 5. This is morbid. And I'm going to apologize. This is not something that you want to hear. None of us want to hear this. I do predict that within the next 3 years, we're going to have our first undisputed human casualty caused by cyber attack. The odds are pretty good that we've already had a death where if the cyber attack didn't occur, that person would still be alive. We've had some close calls where it definitely wasn't, the factor, but it's possible that we've already had our first death by cyber attack. But here's some examples where it's been disputed. Okay, chronologically, in July of 2019, Spring Hill Medical Center in Mobile, Alabama, they had a ransomware attack that impaired hospital medical systems. Okay, and there was an inability to detect this. There was a pregnant woman, and she was in labor, and no one realized that the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. And if they knew that, they would have taken other precautions, maybe made different decisions. and unfortunately, the baby was born, but the baby died. I think it was 9 months later. There was a lawsuit. I think I may not be exact on this, but I think the lawsuit was settled, and it's not known for sure. And the medical system that they would have used to detect that was offline because of the ransomware attack. Okay, so that's an example of where it could be the reason why the baby died, because of this medical system is down. It's just not undisputed. For about I think it was 3 months, 2.5, 3 months. For about 2.5, 3 months in 2020, we thought we had the first undisputed death by cyber attack. Okay, so this was in Dusseldorf, Germany. There was a 78-year-old woman there who suffered a heart attack. And the closest hospital would have been the Dusseldorf University Hospital. Unfortunately, I think it was the day before, they were victimized by a ransomware attack, and it affected their patient intake system. So basically, they could not accept any new patients. So the Dusseldorf University Hospital would have been the closest hospital. The ambulance driver was forced to divert to a hospital that was 32 kilometers away. And then after the woman was admitted into the hospital, she was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. And like I said, for about 2.5 months, I think somewhere in that neighborhood, we thought we had our first undisputed death by ransomware attack. But German officials concluded through the autopsy that her death was unavoidable, and that if she would have been taken to the Dusseldorf University Hospital, she would not have survived anyway. June 2024, this year, Synovus Pathology Services in London, in the UK, was victimized by a cyber attack. And this affected so many different hospitals and surgical centers. Over 1,100 operations had to be postponed, and there were significant delays in emergency rooms. I haven't seen any other reports that maybe a postponed surgery, if it wasn't postponed, someone had survived. I don't know, but I'm not aware of an undisputed death related to a cyber attack. Now, and we talked about ransomware early on, and I said we're going to talk about why hospitals are often targeted by ransomware attacks. This is exactly why. Those sick, despicable uh, uh, excuses for human beings attacking hospitals to get them to pay, because they'll be motivated to pay because they don't want people to die. It's just sick. But it's not just ransomware. There have been attacks on power grids. We've had lots of reports here in the United States of attacks on our own power grids. Nothing successful yet. There could be attacks on nuclear centrifuges. We certainly are aware of Stuxnet that attacked the Iranian nuclear centrifuges in Iran. Now, there was it slowed down their nuclear capability. There wasn't any explosion or anything like that, but you never know. Oil pipelines, water treatment facilities. Okay, so you shut down a water treatment facilities. Now water can't be properly cleaned, and people can't get water. There's just so many, potential avenues where cyber attacks could result in human death. And my prediction, unfortunately, is I think we're going to see our first undisputed human casualty. I'm saying within the next 3 years. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really, really want to be wrong. All right, enough of that. Let's go into some honorable mention predictions. Prediction number 6: organizations begin to contemplate quantum computing cyber risk. Brandon, this one's for you. So we've done 12. This is our 12th webinar this year, and I'm so thrilled to have Brandon as a co-host, because he's so much fun to present with. So this one's for you, because there have been times where you brought up the topic of quantum computing. So I wanted to throw this out there. Organizations will begin to contemplate quantum computing cyber risks. Okay. Now, what are those potential future risks? decrypting widely used public key encryption algorithms like RSA, which is very commonly used today. Undermining blockchain security for cryptocurrencies or smart contracts, enhancing the speed and efficiency of cyber attacks, like cracking passwords, like a brute force attack. Now, why am I saying begin and not make it a priority? Well, first one is you can't buy quantum computers on Amazon, or hardly anywhere. They're few and far between, and they're $10 million each to start with, so they're very, very expensive. You better have the right facility to host it. Cooling systems are required at cryogenic temperatures and in specialized facilities. Now, organizations, I believe Amazon is one of them, are starting to offer quantum computing as a service, but but it's still, from what I've seen, it's like $100 per minute to leverage a quantum computer. It's not cheap. So this is just not readily available to threat actors, and you're going to need some quantum computing operating skills here. These are all inhibitors from threat actors embracing quantum computing. There's an organization called the Global Risk Institute. They surveyed 37, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I don't know what the universe is of quantum computing experts is. I doubt it's thousands. Probably dozens to hundreds. So they interviewed 37 of these very bright people, and they asked, when do you think we're going to see our first cryptanically relevant quantum computers? And they said probably in the mid 2030s. Okay, so now we're in the mid 20s, so a decade away. So Brandon, my question to you is, do you think, I think it's wise that CISOs and cybersecurity leadership, this should be on their radar, but do you think they need to be doing anything specifically to prepare in 2025?
I think they absolutely do. And the number one problem that I'm hearing is just getting a handle on your crypto assets. I had a CISO I was chatting with a couple of months back who said when trying to inventory, for example, all of their developer, and code base certificates, they found one that was signed in the 90s with like a 40-bit key and a 30-year or 40-year expiration on it. And it was because at the time we weren't allowed to export anything that was over 256, and the processing horsepower required was too high. And so just understanding what you have, and I think that is the first step. And then moving towards what the industry is calling post-quantum crypto agility, the ability to switch out. If RSA falls, then what's your new protocol? What's the new algorithm you're going to use? And NIST has done some great work publishing some that they think are going to be quantum resistant. So I would say plan for that flexibility and agility, but first and foremost, starting now, get a handle on where all your certs are and centrally manage them and deal with that, because it's becoming more and more complex, and there's probably a lot of things that are stuffed away in old code and hard coded that you don't know where they are. So that would be my
I think that's good advice, even if there was no such thing as quantum computing. I think that's excellent advice. But but I do hear you. And if you want to be prepared, and I think all of us want to be prepared for quantum computing risks. Yeah, inventorying what you have and looking for potential security risks that are present today. I think that's a very healthy thing. I saw a question come in from Joseph. He said, "I sneezed. How much per minute?" So I did when I was putting together this presentation, I did some Google searches, and I think it was like $97 per minute, for quantum computing as a service from, I think it was Amazon, if I'm not mistaken.
That's pricey.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously no reason to panic, but we all want to be prepared. And that's one of the things that Brandon and I talk about, even with ransomware. Don't wait until the attack happens to figure out, what you're going to do. Be prepared in advance, and that's another one of our recordings. And just like this, be prepared. Take inventory and look at potential security risks for what you have today. I think that's excellent advice. All right, 4 more to go, 7, 8, 9, 10. Prediction number 7, demand for managed detection and response remains high. So in 2019, we asked, are you outsourcing one or more functions to a managed security service provider? If so, which ones? Okay. And in 2019, that was in light blue. And in light blue, the longest bar was managing vulnerability scans. Fast forward 3 years to 2022, we see the biggest bar. It's actually a statistical tie. 41.1% said monitoring and managing SIM platforms, and 41.1% said detecting and responding to advanced cyber threats, managed detection and response. We've asked this question again for 25, so we'll give you an update when our results come out on April 15th of next year. But the point here is MDR is red hot. Back to the one of the themes in our CDR every year, the inhibitors. Okay, it's low security awareness among employees, it's lack of skilled personnel. One of the areas where we see lack of skilled personnel is cyber threat hunting. Okay, these resources are finding people that are great at it. These resources are hard to find, they're expensive. Consider outsourcing it to an MDR vendor or an MSSP that specialize in MDR services. And outsourcing isn't always an ROI play. Like, it's cheaper to outsource than it is to hire. In many instances, it is. But I think one of the big benefits of outsourcing anything to an MSSP or an MDR vendor is you're embracing their best practices. Okay. I remember these TV ads when I was growing up in the 80s. I think it was the 80s, where Kentucky Fried Chicken commercials. Kentucky Fried Chicken, we do chicken right. Okay, so Kentucky Fried Chicken, they don't do hamburgers, they don't do hot dogs, they don't do pizza, they do chicken inside and out. They're the chicken specialists. Okay, MDR vendors and MSSPs that specialize in MDR, they do threat detection right. Okay, they're experts at it. So they have the best practices, most talented people. So as you think about your shortage, if you are experiencing a shortage on the threat hunting side, consider outsourcing to an MDR. It's red hot right now, and I think it's only going to get hotter. Okay. Prediction number 8. Boards of directors will continue to recruit members with strong cybersecurity backgrounds. So we asked, does at least one member of your company's board of directors have a cybersecurity background? Brandon and I were both surprised by this. And keep in mind, the survey margin of error, okay, with our CDR reports is 3%. It's highly statistically significant. These are reliable results here. 62% of boards have a board member with a cybersecurity background. That is fantastic. And I think Brandon and I were both surprised, pleasantly surprised to see that. Now, we also asked, okay, if you don't have a board member with a cybersecurity background, do you think it would help? 80% said yes. Okay. I think this speaks volumes. And we all know, right? Even those of us who are brand new to the security industry, and if you are, by the way, find the webinar recording I did earlier this year, Security Industry 101. It's in the ISC2 Bright Talk channel. I spent an hour just indoctrinating you to the security industry. But all of us know that our industry, we have our own language. Okay, we have our own vocabulary terms, we have our own acronyms, and with boards, you need to translate IT to business. And if you can have a board member who is fluent in the language of cybersecurity, they can help with those translations. They can help your CISO and your leadership convince other board members to make investments. So I think it's a very wise thing. And my prediction is this is a trend that's going to continue for the better. All right, 2 more, and then we're going to have lots of time for Q&A. Prediction number 9. Virtually all security awareness training curriculums will incorporate strategies for combating deepfakes. Okay, so hopefully you're familiar with deepfakes. There's deepfake photos, there's deepfake audio, there's deepfake recorded videos, and now you can have deepfake live video. The article on the right, this is just a screenshot from the CNN website. There was a finance worker who was on a live video call with the CFO. And the CFO, okay, their face, their voice during that live video call instructed this finance worker to wire transfer $25 million because it was urgent. It was critical. Have to do this right now. Okay. And so that's live video. Okay. Um, there's an organization, ISMS Online. They did a press release earlier this year. Deepfakes rank as the second most common cybersecurity incident for U.S. businesses. I'm not sure, that I mean, they have research, and actually they surveyed 518 people who work in information security. So that's a pretty big number. That's like a 5-6% survey margin of error. Now I don't know if they maybe just surveyed their own customers. If that's the case, that's not really fair. But regardless, deepfakes is going to be something that we're going to see more and more about, not only during election cycles, like we just had, where we saw lots of deepfakes instances pop up during the election cycle, okay? But in government organizations and commercial organizations, we're going to see this more and more, okay? Now, getting on my soapbox for just a moment, and I've got actually a slide on this. We have to do better as an industry. Uh, Roughly half of organizations are not doing any security awareness training during onboarding. That has to stop. Find someone to just go down to a conference room or hop on the Zoom call and scare the hell out of your new hires. Okay, security is everyone's responsibility. I personally know one of my first bosses in my career was head of IT security for a credit card processing firm. His company was one of the very first credit card processors that was victimized by a data breach. He lost his job, his resume was kryptonite, and he never worked in the security industry again. It's a company killer. It can be a job killer, and his company did go out of business. So security is everyone's responsibility. We have to take security awareness training seriously. And my prediction is that for those training curriculums that exist today that don't have it, I think more of them are going to have it, and it needs to be part of your security awareness training. Okay, so and this was the slide. I talked about this a couple times. One of the questions we asked, scale of 1 to 5, 5 being highest, what is standing in the way of you and your colleagues being successful at defending your organization against cyber attacks? It's the same two year after year. They flip flop, and we're talking about hundreds of a point here, hundreds of a fraction of a point. But low security awareness and lack of skilled personnel are at the top of the list. We've got to do better. We can do better, and make sure that deepfake training is part of that. And there's a lot of benefits to security awareness training. This is a chart from the InfoSec Institute, and their report is the ROI of security awareness training. So yellow is before, green is after. So before you did security awareness training, or the organizations that were surveyed, 23% of personnel were able to see or recognize mass mailed phishing attacks. Okay, or 27% could recognize spear phishing attacks, very targeted. 24% could recognize social media and web scams. Now you do security awareness training, it's more than double across the board. Okay, so there are no silver bullets in our industry, right? There's no silver bullet security tool. And doing great world-class security awareness training, including what I would recommend is simulated phishing attacks. I'm a monster fan of that technology. I think everybody should embrace it. But even that's not a silver bullet, but it can help. It can help reduce your human attack surface. We think about our attack surface in computers, okay, and hosts. Our attack surface is also our employees. We need to invest in our human firewalls because it makes a very big difference. And deep fakes are only going to make the problem worse. Last prediction here, demand remains high for specialized cybersecurity training and certification. I became a CISSP. I I should honestly remember it at this point, but I think it was like 15 years ago or whatever. It just went through the 3-year renewal cycle. So next year, when you look at the certificate hanging on the wall behind me, it will no longer have the parentheses for ISC, squared. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm a monster fan of training and certification, and having a CISSP or one of the umbrella security certifications, it's fantastic. But don't dismiss demand for specialized training and specialized certifications. The chart here is from 2022. We're going to freshen this chart up again because this is a question that we asked 3 years later. And we're going to be talking about this in the spring of next year because this will be part of our 25 cyber threat defense report. But demand for cloud security specialized training and certification is very high. Software security, very high. But depending on your role, specialized cybersecurity is a great way not only to learn so that you're better equipped to defend your organization, but also to help move your career forward. And one of the questions that we asked in this year's report is, which of the following would help you improve your overall job satisfaction in your company's IT security organization? Top of the list here, cybersecurity training and certification. It was the only one where the majority of the respondents agreed. And Brandon and I did a webinar earlier this year about strategies for recruiting and retaining security talent. Remember that big problem of the IT security skills shortage? You know what? Use training and certification as a carrot. Use it as a carrot for recruiting. Use it as a carrot for retention. So after you join the company on your 1-year anniversary, you can sign up for CISSP training, whatever it is, or specialized security. But it's a great way to use this as both a recruiting and a retention tool. All right, this is our 12th webinar this year. I want to thank all of you for attending these. These are so much fun. Brandon is the one who makes these fun. Every single webinar, I learned something new from him. Also, we're so grateful for the questions that you asked. I am grateful to ISC2 as being a platinum sponsor of our annual cyber threat defense report. We couldn't do this without you. But with that, Brandon, I'm going to turn it back to you. We've got like a whole 6 minutes for Q&A.
Well, I'll start with one that often folks ask, especially about the cyber report, and that is, tell us a little bit about the background on the research. Global in nature, how many orgs, how big is this? Give us some numbers to work with on some of the stuff.
Yeah, sure. So there are a lot of research houses out there. I am very proud of our research best practices. We partner with a B2B panel vendor called Dynata. We're the only ones to do that that I'm aware of. And Dynata has opt-in B2B panels and B2C, but we're B2B around the world. And so they handle the recruiting, and getting people to respond, and the respondents are compensated with points they can cash them in. The reason why I bring this up is Dynata gives us geographic reach that most research houses don't have because they have their own database and they give them Starbucks cards or Amazon cards. Things that we do that are different than others is a survey is not complete unless they answer all the questions. Okay, so our competitors, if they answer the first 3, they'll count that as a sample, and then as the survey goes on, the sample size gets smaller and smaller. We don't. I want to give people an out. Okay, what I mean by that is if they don't know an answer to a specific question, I don't want to force them to guess.
Right.
I don't know. Okay, I would rather somebody say, I don't know the answer to this one than being forced to guess. Very few people do that. Dynata also weeds out speeders and cheaters, and if they complete the survey more than 1 standard deviation outside the mean, it's just we're just so proud of our standards. And because of our sponsors like ISC2, where we can afford to survey 1,200 security professionals, gets us that 3% survey margin of error. So we're really proud of this flagship study that we do every year.
Great, thanks for the background. It's always good to come back to that because the quality of the data is important.
Yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about the first 2 predictions, AI giving security the upper hand for now, and then the autonomous agents. I've already played around with some autonomous agent frameworks. It's fascinating. I've got one that will actually create its own agents, deploy them to do tasks, write code, stuff it in a Docker container, test it, and then spin the agents down as needed. It's crazy. Now, the question is, and this comes in from Lance, says, well, what's the impact on getting a CISSP if AI is going to be on the forefront of security? What do we need it for? And I would say my response to that would be, it's not the AI replaces your job, but somebody who uses AI better than you could. In that it's kind of like, you know, the people you see in entry-level admin jobs are like, must be proficient in Word and Excel. Same kind of thing. You got to have some basic capabilities, but you also need that human intuition and experience and creativity. That would be my take. A friend of mine said, you know, AI is not going to take your job, but someone who uses it better will. So what are your thoughts on AI's impact?
It kind of reminds me, I don't know if it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when SaaS really became mainstream. And there was this belief that the only people left in the IT department were going to be the folks left to change the toner in your printer. I remember that.
Hilarious.
That's certainly not the case. I don't believe AI is going to negate the need for security talent. In fact, it could have the opposite effect, because, you know, if what you said the other day in our webinar, where you feel threat actors have the upper hand, if that's true, they're going to get more innovative, and we're going to need more, not only AI technology, but more people to combat these threats. I think AI is going to uplift security professionals. What I mean by that is security professionals are going to need to be smarter, okay, in the years ahead and decades ahead. And you could say the same thing across many facets of IT. And this is one of the reasons why training and certification is going to be really, really important to stay ahead of the curve as our landscape changes.
Perfect advice to leave everybody with, and the binge watching Netflix style. All the last 11 of these we've done this year. Thanks for putting that out there. If I don't see any of you, or you don't see me between now and the new year, have a wonderful holiday time. Steve, I'll catch you in 2025.
All right, thanks. Take care, everybody. Happy holidays.
Cheers, all.